Good afternoon to everybody who's joined us so far. I'm Steve Burns. I'm the president and CEO of the Idaho Community Foundation. We still got people logging on, so we're just going to give it another minute or two before we get going. But we will thank you very much for joining us today. And I know we have people joining us from across the state. I know we've got folks from Coeur d'Alene and folks from Idaho Falls. We've got people from Cottonwood, people from Pocatello. Lots of folks. We've got folks from Sandpoint who just joined. And Janessa, if you'll just let me know, and it seems like there's people have mostly joined, then we'll get going.
Sounds great. We have a few more hopping in, so maybe just one more minute. Okay, it looks like we have almost everyone. Still a few more jumping in, but maybe we can get started with introductions.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I'm Steve Burns. I'm the president and CEO of the Idaho Community Foundation. And like I said, we have people from across the state who have joined us today. So we're so glad that you're here to get to share a little bit of time with us and to talk about the Idaho Community Foundation. And so Doug Oppenheimer is going to be joining me here in just a second. I'm going to share my screen with all of you. That work? Can everybody see that?
Perfect.
All right. Well, this is the State of the Foundation for 2024. And what we hope to accomplish today are a few things. One, we're going to spend a little bit of time reviewing 2023 and all of the great things that happened there. It really takes a team of people to make all of this happen, including all of the fund holders that we have. We just simply could not, we wouldn't be the Idaho Community Foundation if it wasn't for all of the people who have taken the time and to set up a fund with us to be able to achieve their philanthropic goals. So thank you right off the bat to that group. But we're going to expand a little bit and tell you more about the team that makes it all happen. We are going to spend a little bit of time talking about the 2024 goals and plans. Along the way, we want to tell you a few stories, one about a cool grant that was made last year, one that was about a cool donation that was done. And then also throughout, we will talk to you about how you can help advance, philanthropy and what we're trying to accomplish at the Community Foundation. And so what I would like to do is introduce Doug Oppenheimer, who is the chairman of the board of the Idaho Community Foundation. And like I said, at our 35th anniversary celebration, if you had to invent a board chair, you would invent Doug Oppenheimer. What an incredible asset he is to this organization with his time and talent and his wisdom. So Doug, it is yours.
Well, thank you for those. Thank you for those kind words. And what shows on the slide is just kind of a quick look back at celebrating our 35th anniversary, which was last November 9th, honoring Alice Hennessy. It was a spectacular evening. It was a sold out crowd. And one of the things that resonated with me and an awful lot of other people is so many people from throughout the state came to this wonderful celebration, and the emotional equity and the connective tissue that people in the audience had and been part of the Idaho Community Foundation for years and years and years was absolutely phenomenal to witness and incredibly inspiring. This wouldn't have happened without the leadership of Steve, his staff. It was just a wonderful event and a spectacular evening.
All right. Well, let's start off with one is a quick story. And so the woman here is a woman named Ruth Blaha. She is from Eagle, Idaho. And back in 2000, she and her family had created a family foundation to honor her mother, Mary Bradoff. And then after Mary passed away, they decided that they wanted to transition the foundation and to take what was left in the foundation and to make a grant to the Idaho Community Foundation. And that final disbursement that we received in 2023 went towards our Forever Idaho regional grant cycle, another about $100,000. And it went to fund various things from arts and music, education, youth sports, and it all took place in rural communities throughout Idaho. And I tell you this story for a few different reasons. One, to thank Mary Bradoff and Ruth Blaha and their whole family for working with the Community Foundation, but also to remind people that, you know, when you hear of folks saying, oh, we're going to create a foundation, a lot of times it's easier, a lot of times it's less expensive to create a fund at the Community Foundation rather than a foundation. Also, if a lot of times people will start a foundation and then, you know, perhaps the second generation or the third generation, perhaps they've moved out of state. And so it's a good reminder that a foundation can be turned into a fund at the Community Foundation. And then again, that money went into the Forever Idaho Fund. And this is a pot of unrestricted money that we have available to us. We are a community-driven organization, and so the staff doesn't make any of the funding decisions. We have regional councils who come together and make those decisions as to where those grants are going to go. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here in a minute to talk about those regional councils. But last year, the Forever Idaho grant cycle granted out about $1.1 million across the state. It was a record for the Forever Idaho funds. And so we were delighted to be able to do that. And thanks again to the Bradoff family for partnering with us. So in the 35 years, as part of our celebration, we wanted to do a little bit of a look back. And we have made amazing progress in 3 areas. And so my hat's off to the founders of the Community Foundation and everybody who has helped get the foundation to this point. The board of directors, the regional councils, the staff members, the fund holders, everyone who's been involved. But as you can see, back in 1988, there was less than $100,000 in assets for the Community Foundation. And as of December 31st, of 2023, the foundation had about $251.4 million in assets. And you can just see the good work of all of those people, the generosity of all of those people contributed to that amazing curve that's definitely on the rise. The second, of course, is that assets are important, but what's really important and what we really try to measure is the impact that we're having in Idaho communities. And so as you can see, in terms of grants, we have made tremendous progress in that area as well. The foundation didn't make any grants for the first 2 years. So 1990 was the first year in which grants were made. And as you can see, it's gone from, $300,000 in 1993 up to almost $12 million in grants last year. If you're wondering about that dip there from the 6.8 to 5.1 million, a lot of that can be explained from the Great Recession that took place in 2008. But it also just shows you the power of having an endowment like we do and the good work of our investment subcommittee to the fact that we're now giving out about $12 million in grants each year. We've made about over 35,000 grants in the history of the Community Foundation. And then, of course, those grants are made possible because of the funds that are created by folks like you and people across the state. And as you can see, back in 1998, they started out with five funds, and now it's nearly 700 funds. 688 funds have been created, active funds. There have been even more funds that were created, but some of those funds that were created were not designed to last forever. And so We've had over 1,000 funds that were created, but we have almost 700 that are active right now. Again, a testament to all the people who helped build the foundation to what it is today. And so I want to turn it back over to Doug and talk about one of the key groups of people who make all of this possible.
Well, just to build on what Steve said, this momentum that has been created is because of the people that have had the fund holders, the momentum that we've started, as we said. We're welcoming to the board to keep that positive progress going, 2 wonderful new board members, Mary Jo Ambrosiani and Ruth Pierce. Both of them have joined the board, and their presence is already being wonderfully and profoundly felt. This is a quick snapshot of our current board. Some of those pictures are only about 20 years old. Okay, mine is. And but it's just been wonderful being able to work with such a dedicated board who are so engaged and so committed to helping keep the Idaho Community Foundation going in the right direction. What a privilege it is for me to be able to serve with these dedicated volunteers. And we do, sadly, have some retiring board members, Curry Andrews, Ron Gallegos, and Kevin King. They're terming off the board, and gee, it's been wonderful working with them, and they'll be missed, but we know they're not going real far because they're still incredibly committed to ICF.
Well, speaking of those funds, just a minute ago, it's important to point out that it was Doug's parents who actually created the first ever fund at the Idaho Community Foundation. And so thank you to the Oppenheimer family for 35 years of support. We are a statewide organization, and one of the things that we have been pushing for is to have as much geographic diversity as possible. We want to hear from all parts of the state, and so one of the key groups of people that help us do that are our regional council members. Those Forever Idaho funds that we talked about just a couple of minutes ago, those get divided around amongst the various 4 regions of the state, and then we will ask people to be on our regional council. These are folks who have a good understanding of the issues and the opportunities, the organizations that are working in their regions, and they come together once a year. They review oftentimes over 100 grant applications, and then they meet to decide on how to make those grants. And so these are the new regional council members that we've added in just the last year. Molly Becerras, who does economic development down in the southeastern part of the state. Vaughn Rasmussen from Bear Lake, who's been a county commissioner for 18 years, served on the health board down there. Scott Smith, who's the executive director of the Bingham County Crisis Center. Jen Werlin from Teton County, who is with the 4-H and the University of Idaho Ag Extension Program. Logan Fredrickson in our South Central region from Blaine County. He's a realtor, recently bought the Liberty Theater and restored the Liberty Theater in Haley. Ben Reed from Jerome is actually a DJ in Jerome, works extensively with the Latino community there. And Janet Williamson is the school superintendent in Fairfield in Camas County. Our North region, some brand new members. Jan Baer, again, a school superintendent from Boundary County. Marcy Heyman, business owner and lifelong resident in Wallace and in Kellogg area. In Shoshone County, Susan Jacobson does economic development in Clearwater County. Craig Spencer is a 5th-generation rancher from Idaho County. Joan Woodward is a member of the Women's Gift Alliance, an incredible organization, a giving circle up in Coeur d'Alene. They have over 150 members, and Joan is the treasurer of that. And what a great partnership we have with the Women's Gift Alliance. So thank you to everybody there. And then Clem Yonker from Bonner County, community volunteer for a number of different organizations, the Historical Society, and he and his wife Lori also are fund holders of the Community Foundation. Sally Bouvier in Washington County, an educator. Trudy Jackson, business owner. If you've ever been through Idaho City, she has Trudy's Place. Sue Paul is the director of the Warhawk Museum out in Nampa. John Steiner, a rancher. from Owyhee County, and Alex Zamora from Canyon County, who is also an educator. He is a principal at an elementary school in Wilder. And so I wanted to go through them just to be able to show you the breadth of experience and background that our regional council members, and this is in addition to the existing community, to the existing regional council members. These folks come together, they have incredible conversations. Those are always difficult because you'd love to be able to give money to everybody, but you have to be able to make decisions, and they do it with thoughtfulness, and they spend a lot of time and a lot of work doing that. So thank you to all of our new regional council members and all of the existing. We also added some staff this year, and so Danny Dale is one of our staff accountants. Janessa Hanson-Evans, who you may have seen at the beginning of this, is working in marketing and events. Clark Hivenen, a philanthropic advisor who is doing work in both our South Central and Southwest regions. Kristen Lucchini, who is the executive and operations coordinator, and she tells Judy and I what to do, which is very helpful and we much appreciate it. And then Savannah Slater, who is our data services coordinator. And so we've added some great folks to the team. And I also want to thank the entire team. This was us at our 35th anniversary. One of the things I can say about the staff of the Idaho Community Foundation is that they care deeply about Idaho. They care deeply about the communities in Idaho, and they want nothing but absolute success for those communities. And they work hard every day to help grow the foundation so that we can get more grants out the door to be able to do the things that Idaho communities need to do. And so I appreciate and thank the staff for all of their work. So now we just want to tell you another story, and this is about a grant. And so every year since 2020, former Idaho classroom teachers and early childhood educators they work with Idaho Public Television as part of their education team. And each year they carefully curate and assemble kindergarten readiness kits, which are delivered for free to rural schools in Idaho during kindergarten registration. And the Idaho Future Fund, which is a fund of the Community Foundation, and the Dan and Mickey Chapin Fund, again, one of our funds, have partnered with Idaho Public Television to fund this effort. And the kits are currently being assembled for distribution in March and April, and Idaho Public Television expects to distribute about 1,000 kits this year. And so that's just one of the ways. I have gotten all over the state, and I think for those of you who received my weekly newsletter, I try to take pictures of things or programs that have been funded with a grant from the Community Foundation. And it's just truly amazing the breadth of things that the Community Foundation funds every single year across all 44 counties in Idaho. And so where do we go from here? As I mentioned before, I get around the state, my staff gets around the state. We obviously have board members, regional council members, past board and regional council members across the state, and we're constantly having conversations with folks. We want to have a good understanding of what's happening in Idaho communities. And I think everyone would agree we see increasing needs, but we also see increasing opportunities. There's amazing things that are going on around the state. We see the fact that according to a University of Idaho study that was recently done, 26% of everyone who lives in Idaho has moved here in the last 5 years. 500,000 brand new Idahoans. And so we welcome them and we're glad they're here, and we need to figure out how to involve even more of those folks to help take care of their new community that they live in. Of course, we hear constantly around the state about affordable housing, the need for affordable housing. There isn't a single community that I've been in that doesn't talk about affordable housing. Of course, we talk about schools. We have some schools in Idaho that are in really poor shape. And so we hear that across the state, and the difficulty of passing bonds, the difficulty of passing levies in a lot of these places. So that seems to be one of the topics that comes up on a regular basis. We hear about mental health issues, challenges, crises in communities around the state. We see homelessness, and that varies by community, but we hear about it in every single community that we're in. And then, of course, there's food insecurity issues. I've really come to appreciate, and I've been amazed at just how many Idahoans are fed through the community food banks and pantries that exist across the state. And without all of those, we would, have a lot more people who face food insecurity on a daily basis. And so these are some of the things that we hear about. We listen when we go into the communities. We never want to walk into a community and say, this is what we think you need. We want to listen to the people who live there and say, this is your community. Please tell us what you need. And we will try to do our best to, find some grants to make those dreams or possible. And so as we look around, we do a little bit of comparison. We look at other foundations. And if you look at foundations, Idaho ranks 41st in the number of foundations that we have. We have 17 private foundations per 100,000 people. Some of our neighbors, Montana has 29. Wyoming has 49. Washington and Oregon had about 24 or 25 apiece. And so we just don't have as many foundations as there are in other states. And then we just do not have the scale. The foundations that we have here just aren't as big as what you see in other states. And so our board of directors, about a year and a half ago, adopted 2 goals. And the first, and both of them can be summed up with 20 by 40. The first is that we want to be granting out at least $20 million a year, each year, by our 40th anniversary at the end of 2028. As I mentioned, we gave out about $12 million in grants the last 2 years, each of the last 2 years. And so we would have to increase the number of grants by about $8 million. Given the fact that some of those grants are endowed, it means that we've got to raise a lot more in assets to be able to give out $8 million, but it's not the only way. Endowed isn't the only way we give out grants, but we definitely need to be out there increasing the number of funds that have been created in order to be able to give out $20 million. And then we just need more people to know about the Idaho Community Foundation than ever before. I've been amazed at how many people have worked. It's wonderful to see how many people have worked with us, but I've been amazed to hear how many people have never heard of the Community Foundation. And we need more people to realize that we are here to help them achieve their philanthropic goals. And so we set a goal and said we want to tell our story at least 20,000 times a year. And so last year we told it 19,844 times. So we were right there. About 6,000 of those stories were told in person to people, and then about 14,000 of them were told through our various newsletters and social media. Those are real numbers, though. We only count, if we send out 100 newsletters, we only count the ones that get open, and we know they get read. We don't want to just artificially inflate that number. But that's the key part, is to just be telling our story as much as we possibly can. And this is where you come in, because we need more people to help us tell that story, for people to realize that we are here to help them achieve their philanthropic goals. And so as you can see, last year we had about $12.1 million in new contributions, 22 new funds set up, and there's the about almost $12 million in grants that were made across Idaho. And then as far as our 2024 goals, these are where you can help. Again, telling our story 20,000 times. A group of people that we work with regularly, our accountants, our estate attorneys, people who are creating funds are oftentimes having a conversation with their CPA, with their estate attorney, saying, look, I'd like to give something back to my community, but I'm not quite sure what to do. And so we have CPAs and estate attorneys and financial advisors who reach out to us and say, hey, I'd like to introduce you to my client. And we're going to continue to do that, but we need to go beyond just the professional advisors. We need lots more people to know that we're out there. And so we are talking to community leaders. We're talking to people who we think, who've recently sold their business, or they're trying to figure out what to do with the family farm. People who have gotten to a point where they're deciding what to do with their assets. So please, tell them about the Community Foundation. If it works, please tell them, make an introduction. We would love to have a conversation with them. We work in so many different ways across Idaho. Yes, we set up donor advised funds and scholarship funds, but we work with Rotary clubs, we work with mayors, we work with Senator Crapo, we work with different kinds of organizations. We have special project funds. There's so many different ways that we can work in communities. And so we're in the process of creating a brochure that will help explain all of those different ways. We don't want people to get caught up and think, oh, I can't create a donor advised fund right now. There's lots of ways that people can work, and we just need to, that brochure will help illustrate all of those different ways to make it easier for you to help tell our story. We've got a number of donor events that are still scheduled across the state. We have 2 celebration of philanthropies, one in Coeur d'Alene, one in Ketchum. And then we also sponsor a number of events. Wherever those professional advisors are gathered, we try to be there so that we can tell the story of the Community Foundation so that they can help tell that story to their clients as well. And so I get around the state, my staff gets around the state. I'll be in the next 3 months. I'll be in the Treasure Valley. I'll be up in Ketchum in the Wood River, and then Moscow, Coeur d'Alene, and Wallace next week. Be in the Wood River Valley again in April, and then also in the eastern part of the state and the northern part of the state again in May. I'm doing my best to reach out to folks who have been on our board, our past board members, our regional councils, to let you know that I'm coming. If you have someone who you'd like to, for me to meet or any of my staff to meet, please, help set up those meetings. We'd love to be able to hear from you. And if you'd like to join us on any of those meetings, we'd love to have you as well. And then, of course, you're invited. We will send out a link after this with some exact dates. But as I mentioned, we do have our celebration of philanthropy in Coeur d'Alene on May 23rd. President Scott Green of the University of Idaho will be the keynote speaker for that. We've got lots of fun things planned for that celebration. We've got a donor happy hour in May in Pocatello. We have a professional advisor event as well. We've got happy hours in East Idaho, in North Idaho, and you can read the rest of the slide to see all of the various places. And as I said, in our follow-up to this, we'll put some exact dates so that you know when those are, and we would love to have you join us. And so with that, I would like to turn it back over to Doug to finish up, and then afterwards we will open it up. And if anyone has questions, you could do that. If you want to drop your question in the chat, that's probably the easiest way to do that. But we'll be around to answer your questions. So, Doug.
Thanks, Steve. Well, as you can see, as Steve so wonderfully outlined, we have got a bold and exciting goal as we look to the future. We think it's aggressively realistic. When Steve came in as our new CEO a few years ago, he was tasked with taking the Idaho Community Foundation to the next level. And that's exactly what he and his team are doing, with a lot of support and help from all of you in this call, the board, and countless fund holders throughout the state. Steve's been to all 44 counties throughout Idaho, and his presence has been terrifically felt. We're so excited about where we've been. As the quote from Teresa Little says, the 35th anniversary was just an incredible event. It was centered around Alice Hennessy, who's been such an amazing role model in a myriad of ways throughout a lot of organizations. And it was with her leadership and vision that we're really where we are today. Without Alice, none of this really would have been happening. And we kind of stand proudly on her shoulders. The events that Steve outlined, I know when I go to those events, I arrive excited and I leave inspired without exception. It is just wonderful to be an aggressive listener and hearing the stories of how the fund holders have really changed so many organizations and so many individual lives throughout Idaho. It is just wonderful to be able to be the beneficiary of all the great things that the Idaho Community Foundation has done throughout our wonderful state. We can't thank you enough. It's just incredible. The reason ICF is going where it is thanks to the leadership of Steve and his team and all of you that have been so incredibly committed and engaged in helping make Idaho an even better place. So we can't thank you enough. And Steve, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Well, thanks, Doug. I'll stop sharing and find out if anybody has any questions. And again, probably the easiest is either raise your hand or to drop it into the chat. And if you're not sure about the chat, if you're new to Teams, you'll see it up on the top of your screen. There's a number of things, and there's a little question bubble there that you can hit that and then just type in your question, or if you want to raise your hand, you can do that as well.
And if none of the questions come instantly to mind now, one of the things that I can tell you is Steve and his team are always, and I mean always, available 24/7. Their ability to respond quickly and generously to people's questions and ideas is absolutely spectacular.
It looks like Camilla has a question.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much for letting me join on this call. It was super informative. And I think the biggest thing that I have a question for when we're looking for people in the community to just share about the organization, is there a typical dollar amount or a minimum that we're looking to elicit for a fund?
So depending on the kind of fund that someone wants to create, to start a fund is about $25,000.
Okay.
If it's a scholarship fund, it can be more than that. It can be $50,000, but that's typically what a fund to start a fund is.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Well, folks, if we don't have any other questions, I guess I just want to, again, thank everybody for being here. Thanks to everyone who has worked with the Community Foundation over the years to build it to this point, to think that we have $250 million in assets, that we're making $12 million in grants, and we've made over 35,000 grants across the state in the 35 years that we've been here. Oh, there is another question. So before we go, I'll answer that. So Erin Nuxel, a board member of ours.
One moment while I unmute her.
Okay.
Okay, Erin, go ahead. Unmute yourself. Erin, I think you can now unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. I really appreciate the question on how much it took to generate a fund. And so how do you get started with ICF? But I also think there's other ways that you don't have to get quite up to that 25,000 if you wanted to have some way to help across Idaho. And the Idaho Forever Fund is a way that you can donate to that fund and we can go out. So it doesn't have to be at that level, because I know sometimes 25,000 is a pretty big give. So I'm just thinking other ways that you can connect into Idaho Community Foundation. Maybe Steve, you could share other ways, but really we would take that and be able to find a way to help across our communities in Idaho.
That's a great point, Erin. Thank you very much. Yes, as Erin said, we do have the Forever Idaho Fund, and it is that money goes across the state. So anyone can donate any amount to the Forever Idaho Fund. There's a number of other funds that we have, various things to help schools, to help with supportive housing that folks can donate to. If you go to our website, you can see all of the various funds that we have. There's different opportunities to contribute to any of those. And then, of course, if you've created a fund and you would like to donate even more to that fund, that is a possibility as well. So if there's ever any questions about it, you can just contact us and we can help walk somebody through it.
And it looks like Alice Hennessy would like to ask a quick question or make a comment. So she is now able to unmute as well.
Alice, I'm not sure if you've unmuted yourself. Yeah, we still can't hear you, Alice. Janice, are you able to unmute?
Let me see.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, we
we can hear you now. Yep,
Wonderful.
we can hear you now.
Thanks,
You can hear
Alice.
me now.
Yep.
I'm on my phone and it's a little unusual for me. You mentioned 25,000 for one kind of fund, 50,000 for a scholarship fund. Am I correct that that can be paid over time? It does not have to be paid all in the very first chunk?
Yeah, that's a great point, Alice. We would be happy to sit down with anyone and talk about, creating a pledge. And typically you can extend that pledge over a 5-year period of time. So great point. Thank you. All right, folks. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today and working with the Idaho Community Foundation. We will send out a link afterwards to with a recording of this. So if anyone wants to share it with someone, feel free to go ahead and do that. And if you have any questions, please reach out. We're happy to work with you. So thank you again.
Thanks, everybody.